The ancestors' teachings are about what is inside of you. And this is what's important. It's not your skin color. Nobody was created with a skin color. In the very beginning of this creation, of the earth, humans appear in about 5 areas at a time when there's only one continent. The star knowledge stories say this. The star knowledge stories say that we were here a hell of a lot longer than what scientists and archaeologists say. The scientists and archaeologists base all their findings only on what they find. I mean, look at, this is a pretty big planet that we live on, yeah? And the fact is, it is extremely possible that something once existed before. This planet is pretty old. That's the other thing. And so this is saying that, it's incredibly possible that civilizations existed much more advanced than what we have today. But because of their violation of the earth, the violation of nature, upsetting the balance of nature, abusing fire, polluting water and air and land, and that this led to the destruction, this led to a cleansing, that the earth had to rebalance nature, therefore had to cleanse everything by taking everything inside of her, and therefore it can't exist anymore. It's hot in the center of the earth. Things melt there. So that she took everything inside of her, so that you'll never find the evidence because it doesn't exist anymore. But the stories talk about these things. The stories say, about what it was like on this earth at that time. It talks about the part that always really gets my attention in these Lakota Star Knowledge stories is when it says that this was at a time when people could travel great distances through the earth and through the air. They could really travel far away places. And so I think, what was that? How did they do that? They must have had a technology to do that. And then there's other stories that talk about, during the time, just before the cleansing, they talk about manipulating things, manipulating life. And this is, to me, is kind of hinting at genetics. Yeah, and that getting, not being careful, it could really upset the balance of nature in a catastrophical way. So these stories talk about things like that, and then when it talks about certain landscapes and the way they looked at that time, and today when you go to those areas and you see, of course, it looks much different. A really good example is this in South Dakota. This today it's called the Badlands, Makhoshche, and in these stories it says that there were animals that were causing problems for the people. It's saying that the people and these animals lived at the same time, and that the what do you call it? The people they found a way to get rid of these animals, and they in several parts of the world they did this. They spread the news on how to get rid of them. So they rounded up these animals in certain locations, and then they massacred them. And then the stories say you're not supposed to go there. I mean, you're not supposed to live there. Where these animals were massacred by humans, they're not supposed to go there. That's this. See, when you do something, this is a communication. You're leaving an energy behind that came from the action of whatever it is you did. So when it is a huge event where a lot of people or animals or life forms are annihilated, literally massacred in a short amount of time, See, look at all that killing that's happening in a short amount of time. The act of killing, the act of dying, that's leaving an energy in that location. And that energy can make you sick because of the acts that this energies came from. Yeah? So sometimes when people walk in these locations, they feel funny. They feel sick. They feel disturbed. I know people like that. So, that's a pretty good sign that something happened in that location that was really, really horrible. Yeah? So our stories say where these animals were destroyed, you're not supposed to be there. Yeah? You're not supposed to be there because it drives people crazy. Why do you think about that? What is that? People say, the Lakota Star Knowledge stories continue to say, some of these animals, you can find the bones of some of these animals in the Badlands. What kind of animal bones do you think you find in the Badlands? You see what I mean? You just put two and two together. And no, it's not 22. That shows you, that says something different than what scientists are saying. Okay? These are the ancestors I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the days of roaming the plains, living in teepees and doing the 7 ceremonies and stuff like that. I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about predates that time period by millions of years. And the world was much different. Yeah, that's the ancestors that I'm speaking of. The real first generation of this earth. And what they talk about, they don't, for one thing, we're not even called Lakota people. They use a different term. And this is, it talks about how we come on the earth and stuff like that. See, these teachings from this time period, it's called Ehani, long time ago. Yeah? That these teachings from that time period have everything to do with what's inside of you, because they said that this is where reality begins. This is where everything begins. And skin color developed at a much later time period. That develops according to where a group of people ends up and where that location is in relation to the sun. And that's where skin color, hair texture, eye color, that's where that develops. But we were not created in that skin color. We developed into that skin color over millions of years. Yeah, this didn't happen overnight. So that's what I focus on, and that's I choose to follow that way because that way has led me to making friends, making and having friends all over the world. So I don't see things the way people do in South Dakota. That's why I choose not to respond to racism with further racism. There's a German girl here in not here in Berlin, but in what we call Bayern. That's Bavaria. That's the southern part of Germany. Originally, she's the East German girl, and she said something really. The way she said it was really cool, and I choose to use her analogy. And she said something like, it doesn't matter what color you paint the peach. It's still a peach on the inside, and it still tastes the same. That's true. That's true with us too. That's true with Indians. With humans. A lot of Indians refuse to accept that. Today, a lot of Indians like to think that, yeah, we are the chosen people. We are the guardians of the earth. We are the guardians of the universe, and we are the original transformers, or whatever they're saying these days. And we don't believe in this. We are the world bullshit crap, and stuff like that. And we have to protect our ceremonies because they belong to us, and blah blah blah. And all that kind of rhetoric is evidence that they are focusing on the skin color. They're focusing on outside of themselves. They are not focusing where it's important, where your heart, your body, your emotions, that's the heart, your mind, your soul connect, your sacred center. What I was saying at the beginning of the show, they're so far away from that it's ridiculous. And Lakota Star Knowledge says that the more you stay away from your sacred center, you become something called Gnaskinyan. Gnaskinyan, and I'll give you a small sampling of what Gnaskinyan is. Gnaskinyan, long time ago, so they would, when they did buffalo hunts, sometimes they would find one that was really crazy, and it seemed to terrorize an entire herd. And so they felt, let's get rid of that one. Yeah, so they would chase it, and sometimes it took several days to bring it down. It was so powerful. Spears all over its body, it still wouldn't go down. It would attack the people. Yeah, and wouldn't go down. It'd just stand there. So everybody would be astonished at it, and finally, they would, several days later, they were able to bring it down. And then they cut it open to begin to process it, and they find out there's nothing in there. This is Gnaskinyan. Yeah, it focused only on its outside. It did that all its life, that everything that was on the inside eroded away, and there was nothing more. Therefore, it became truly insane. That's Gnaskinyan. That story is warning us that if we focus only on our skin color, yeah, and start saying, what a lot of Indians today are saying, that's showing us that we are, when we talk like that, we are bringing about our own destruction. We are destroying ourselves. The more you say shit like, yeah, proud to be native women are the best, native men are the best, and now you might as well call yourself a Nazi, because that's the same damn thing. Yeah, one of the American Indian movement activists who's now dead today. He didn't die today. He's been dead for about a year. In his book, he says something like, "Well, let me read that for you. I copied this. Yeah, to me, this really says it all about how sick Indian racism has become." Yeah, and this is something, like I said, this is it shows Gnaskinyan. Yeah, it shows that there's nothing inside this man. See, even that dog outside agrees. It's a nice dog that lives here. Kind of hyper. He's a good guy. Yeah, a good girl. I really like this dog. And anyway, okay. Let's see. Let me pull this up here. This photo, if I can. Here we go. Okay, I'm gonna get. This is a quote from his book. Okay. What he says is, golden eagles don't mate with bald eagles. Deer don't mate with antelope. Gray wolves don't mate with red wolves. Just look at domesticated animals, at mongrel dogs, at mixed breed horses, and you will know the great mystery did not intend them to be that way. We weaken the species and introduce disease by mixing what should be kept separate. Among humans, interracial marriage weakens the respect people have for themselves and for their traditions. It undermines clarity of spirit and mind. So what he's saying is that people who come from different races should not marry and should not have children. This is racism. This is something Adolf Hitler could have said. Who do you think said this? This is Russell Means. This is evidence that not all Indians are good. This is a racist. Imagine that. Imagine you have let's say you have a son or daughter, and your son or daughter marries somebody who's a different race, and they have a child. How can you look at your grandchild and say you are an abomination? You should have never been born. How can you look at a baby and say that to the baby? Because that's what this man is about. This way of thinking is sickness. This is ill. This is disease, to think like this. Just the other day on Shan River Sioux Tribe's Facebook page, I saw an article where a grandmother posted a picture of some of her grandchildren who are half black, and she stated something like, "I don't know what to think about when the more our Indian young people are having children with people who are not Indian. I don't know what to think about that." And to me, that says the fact that she questions it, that shows that she's on the road to saying this is not right. That Indian people should not have babies with people from other races, and that those babies are an abomination. How can she, as a grandmother, say this to her grandchildren? That because they're half black, that they're not good. That is racism. Do you see what I mean? Indians can be incredibly racist. And this is not the way of the ancestors. Because this way, today, the Indian racists of today, what they're focusing on is only the skin color. And the more that they do that, the more that they stay away from their sacred centers, eventually that's going to erode away, and they're going to be like that dead, crazy buffalo. Gnaskinyan, nothing inside. Nothing. No substance inside. That is not the way of the ancestors. That's the way to die. This is why I'm not a supporter of the American Indian movement. That is a racist organization. And it's not a civil rights organization either. Definitely not. Not when you terrorize your own people just because they disagree with you. That is not respect. Yeah? There's just something to think about. And I'm not asking you to agree with me. I'm not asking you to do anything, but think about what I just said. What's more important, your skin or what's inside of you? What's inside of us is all the same.